Okay, well, I have the privilege to introduce to you the speaker for this morning as well as tomorrow. His name is Dan Nichols. Let me give you a few things that will characterize and describe him, and at the end I'll have a few words off script, if that's okay, Dan. It will be. Dan is the executive director of the Northeast Collaborative. As an ABWE missionary, Dan was the founding church planter for Restored Church in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He is currently finishing his Doctorate of Ministry degree at BBS, and he also teaches adjunct. He's an adjunct faculty member here at CSU. He and his wife have been married for 6 years. They have a 4-year-old son named Landon, and a second son who will be named Declan, and he is arriving, it says here, in late October. I had the opportunity, yes, you can clap in just a second. Or clap now. I had the opportunity to come alongside Dan. He and I were speakers at the TLC conference. And I think if I had to describe Dan, I would do it this way. It's pretty straightforward. He loves God and he loves people. Dan loves to be a worshiper of God, and he loves to tell people about the gospel. That's Dan. So I think today and tomorrow you're going to be challenged, I'm sure, but I think you're also going to be encouraged, and you're going to get the opportunity to hear from somebody who is characterized in that way, and that's really cool, Dan. I appreciate your heart for God and for people, especially being a church planter. Well done. Appreciate it. Thank you. Now you can go ahead and clap for him.
Fake faith. It's hard to find anything that's real anymore, but then again, maybe not. Reality's right in front of us. I mean, addictions are real, drugs are destroying lives, politics are a circus, debt is rising, churches are dying, and people feel alone. This nation is looking for hope more than ever before. And whether they know it or not, they're looking for Jesus, because Jesus is the real deal. He was the most authentic, down-to-earth, all cards on the table man who ever walked on this planet. But he wasn't just a man, he was God. God with us, totally with us, completely authentic, genuine, and real, honest in everything he did and everything he said. And you know what? I want to be more like Jesus. I want people to follow Jesus. I want them to make him the Lord and leader of their lives, and I want to represent Jesus well. In 2013, I led an amazing team that launched a church where the only rule is no perfect people allowed. And that's because Jesus was perfect for us. It's all about a personal relationship with him. We're not selling religious goods and services. America doesn't need more religious goods and services. They need the real deal. See, they need believers who are willing to lovingly leave their comfort zones just like Jesus. They need churches where you come as you are, but you don't stay as you are. They need leaders who are passionate about taking people from lost to leading. And they need to see that Jesus changes lives today, right here, right now, starting with us, starting with me. But I can't do this alone, and you can't do this alone. It's going to take teamwork to make this reality. So, whether it's coaching, training, or speaking, here's what I can bring to the team. First, this is what I live for. God keeps giving me opportunities to empower leaders, mobilize the church, and point people to Jesus. Second, I try to communicate with an all cards on the table attitude. I've connected with thousands of people all over this nation, and God keeps calling me to connect with more. And third, I stay on the front lines of ministry, and this is where God gives me what I need to coach, train, and speak effectively. God's taught me a lot in life. He's taken me to places I never thought I could go. He's helped me through sufferings I never thought I could endure. He's been patient with all my doubts, brought dreams to reality, and He's given me more than I ever deserved. Jesus is the real deal, so let's do this together.
All right, good morning, CSU. It is an honor to be here, and I got a confession to make this morning. You know, I was here for 4 years as an undergrad student, and my confession to you is that there is only one chapel that I remember. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that in front of you now as you're in your undergrad studies, but out of all the hundreds of chapels, there's only one that I remember. Actually, I need to take that back. There's two. There's one I remember where a professor named Colin Smith, who is with the Lord now, he was a Hebrew scholar, and he was very upset about this guy named Bono. And I'm a huge U2 fan. Are there any U2 fans out there? Like 3 of you. Great. Okay. How many of you have no clue who U2 is? You're like, I don't know who that is, what that is. How many of you do know who U2 is? Oh, man, that's good. That's comforting. Good. If you don't know who they are and you're just embarrassed to raise your hand, you got to know they're world changers who have influenced the course of life on this planet, okay? You just need to know that. Anyway, they're a great band. They've been together for a long time. Anyway, he stood up and he was like, there's this guy named Bono. And I was like, excuse me? I'm super offended right now. His name is Bono, not Bono. And that's really the only reason I remember that one. I don't remember the message, but I do remember him saying his name wrong. No, the only chapel that I really remember was when one of my pastors at the time, I attended Parker Hill Church for 4 years when I was in my undergrad here, and one of my pastors, Mark Fitch, he's now no longer at Parker Hill, but he's at another church now. He came to chapel, and he sat on a stool just like this, and he didn't preach a sermon. Instead, he shared his heart, and he shared a part of his story where he was running far from God, even in his seminary studies. And he shared a story of how, while he was at seminary, he drove out of the seminary parking lot, and he went to a hotel room to meet up with a woman that he had been chatting with online for months that was not his wife. And he went into that room, she knocked on the door, and he talked about how in that moment, God met him in that moment. He never opened the door. He went back home, reconciled with his wife, became a pastor, and now God is using him at a church south of here to reach thousands of people for Jesus. It's an incredible story. And I'll never forget hearing Mark just openly and honestly sharing his heart and what really happened to bring him to the point of where he was when he was sharing that back in 2007, I think, is when he shared this story. So today, I'm not going to preach a sermon as much as I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you. And tomorrow, I'm really excited. I hope you come back. Don't use a skip tomorrow. I'm going to share with you more about the Northeast Collaborative, and I'm really pumped to tell you what we're doing and how you can be a part of it. So come back tomorrow. I want to tell you more about the Northeast Collaborative. I'm really excited about that. But today, I thought I'd just take a few moments and share with you a story of when I hit rock bottom in my life. And I don't know if you've hit that moment in your life yet. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but in 2010, I hit rock bottom. And I want to share you something that God taught me through that journey, and hopefully it helps you in your own spiritual journey. Sound good? Thumbs up if you're with me. Sound like a plan? Awesome. So in 2008, way back in the dark ages, I was a junior here at Baptist Bible College, and I declared war. Now, when I say that, it sounds a little freaky. It's really not as bad as it seems. Here's what I did. I declared war on the dating subculture that is here on this campus. Now, I don't know if it's still true today, but back in the day, there was this super weird dating, pressure. Okay, if you looked at a girl, you liked her. If you talked to her, you were boyfriend and girlfriend. And if you went off campus, you were obviously getting married. Obviously, you were going to become husband and wife. And I was like, you know what? That is wrong. I'm declaring war. And here's how I was going to fight that. Now, I am not recommending this. Hear me clearly. This backfired. I'll tell you how it backfired. But I said, you know what? We should be able to hang out, like guys and girls, and even just one-on-one, hang out and have a great time, okay? And just get to know each other and not feel like we have to get married. Like we should be able to do that. So I said, I'm going to ask a different girl out on a date every other week. You guys might see where this is going. So I did that for several months. I think it went into the second semester. This is a true story. And to be honest, it went really well for a while because I would say, hey, to different friends that I had on campus, said, hey, I want to take you out to dinner. This is not like I want to be boyfriend, girlfriend, we want to get married. This is literally like I want to take you out to dinner, get to know each other, and just have a great time. And I did that for a while until I took one girl out, and the whole thing backfired. You know why? I really started to like her a lot. And the whole reason that I started this thing was completely kaput, and I was like, oh no, what is happening? This wasn't supposed to happen. So, it didn't pan out the way I thought, and we did become boyfriend and girlfriend. We dated for 9 months, and we eventually got engaged. We fell in love over those 9 months. And God, we were really in love. God was doing neat things in our relationship. Our families connected really well. She and my sister connected really well, and things were going great. But there was a point where, especially about midway through the time when we started to become boyfriend-girlfriend, where we started to recognize that we had a lot of differences when it came to theology and when it came to the church. And neither of us really noticed how important that would be later on in the moment, and so we kind of just would have those discussions, but we never really saw the importance of that, especially looking to marriage. And then when we got engaged, we started premarital counseling, and our premarital counselors were telling us as we got closer and closer to the wedding date, they were like, guys, gotta be honest with you, we've never met a couple that would argue about theology and church as much. Like, you guys are supposed to be in that lovey-dovey phase where you don't really think about all that. You're just supposed to be so in love, and we were, but the closer we got to the wedding date, the more that these differences started to get highlighted. Well, we actually got a month away from our wedding date. Our wedding date was 4 weeks away, and our apartment in Scranton was all set up, ready for marriage. The invitations for the wedding were all sent out, and we were heading towards marriage very quickly. But God started to do a work in her heart. Great girl, great family, nothing bad to say. But the reality of these differences started to get impressed on her heart and her mind, and she called me, and again, a month away from the wedding date, and we started to dialogue through it more. And here's essentially what she was saying. She said, Dan, I love you. I want to get married. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I have to be honest, the more that we've wrestled through these things, I'm not sure that I could be a member at a church that you were leading. And when she told me that, I can't even describe to you how hard that was. I mean, hearing that from someone that, we were so in love, we were so excited to get married, but yet there was this reality of some very significant differences. So we sent out a notice to everyone we had invited to the wedding, and we said, we're going to postpone. We're not canceling. We're trying to work through some things. We're going to move the wedding date back. And so over the course of that next month, we started having really in-depth conversations about our differences of perspectives and things. And about a month after that realization in her heart, there was a day where I was at her house. I was hanging out with her and her family, and things just became so crystal clear that, you know what, we probably shouldn't get married. And it's probably the wisest decision for us. And both of us came to that realization. And guys, I'm not going to give all the details. It was a very emotional day, but essentially, she couldn't even give the ring back to me. I had to grab her hand, take the ring, and actually remove it from her finger because she was so, she couldn't give the ring back to me. It was such a difficult day. And as I drove back to campus here, I was working for admissions. I was living in Scranton, as I told you, and as I drove back, I just felt numb. Like, I don't really know how to describe it, but when you go through something really traumatic like that, like the relational pain and all that stuff, it was so tough for both of us. I felt incredibly numb. And I came back, it was a weekend, I worked Monday through Friday, and that numbness stayed with me through the work week. But when I walked out of Jackson Hall after I had finished my work for that day, and I walked into a new normal, into a weekend where I didn't have any plans, I had no idea what this new normal felt like, that numbness, it wore off, and it wore off fast. And all that was left was this raw pain, this hurt, and this rock bottom moment where, to be honest with you, I looked at God and I said, you know what? I get one day. I get one day, God. See, what you don't know about my story is I grew up as a pastor's kid, started following Jesus ever since I was 4 years old. And I grew up in a really sheltered home, all right? How many of you think that you were sheltered as a kid? Yeah? Yeah? Guess what? I win the award. Here's why. My parents are amazing people. I love them. They're like the greatest people ever. But they made me fast forward parts of VeggieTales, people. Some of you are like, I don't even understand what you're saying right now. Let me break it down for you. Madam Blueberry had a rap section, all right? And rock and roll and drum beats and all that was of the devil. So we had to fast forward that rap part of Madam Blueberry. I'm not making this up. Some of you are looking at me, you're like, I'm not making this up. I got another confession to make. I did watch it, all right? It goes something like bungee, but anyway. So you got to understand, in my context, maybe you don't come from a background like me, but I grew up in an environment where I had to come to Baptist Bible College to get unsheltered, all right? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. So really, up until this point in my life, guys, again, just being real with you, I had never had that moment where I was like, maybe Jesus shouldn't be the Lord and leader of my life. Like, maybe God shouldn't be the boss. Maybe I should be the boss. And I looked up at God and I was like, I get one night. I've given you 21 years, I get one night. And without all the details, I ended up wandering around Scranton, you know? It's like, wow, really? If I choose to have one night, that's where I go, right? Scranton. So I go to Scranton, and I end up at a bar. And I start hanging out with people. I'm the kind of personality where I've never known a stranger. And I start hanging out with this group, and there's this girl there, super attractive. And I'm like, that's right, this is my night. I'm going to see if she wants to come back to the apartment with me, the apartment where I was going to get married. And she was there. I remember she had a gay friend sitting next to her, and she had some other friends, and finally she and I started talking away from the crowd, and she gave me her number. She's like, I got to work the night shift, but I'd love to go on a date tomorrow, or, you know, just let me know. And I'll pretend like the number was the real number, you know. We'll just pretend like that was the real number. But so I got in the car, and again, for me, this was crazy. I got in the car and I was like, what am I doing? I don't know which way is up, which way is down anymore. And guys, I walked into my apartment, and I'm not making this up. This was so huge for me that I started shaking like this. I'm walking up the stairs, and I think God was just shaking me because I could not believe that I was doing this, that I was actually considering walking down that path where I'm the boss of my own life and God isn't. And I called my dad, I called Boykin, I called one of my other pastors, Jamie. Boykin and Jamie came right over the apartment. My dad started leaving from Michigan the next morning, and when I called him the next morning, he said, I'm already in Cleveland, and I'll never forget that. But there's something that God taught me in the middle of all of this, and I hope it's helpful to you. Sometimes God takes what we really want so he can show us what we should want. Sometimes God takes what we really want to show us what we should want. And you know, before all this went down, I would have told you, man, I'm pursuing Jesus. I'm pursuing even full-time ministry as a pastor. Like, I would have told you that Jesus was really the focal point of my life. But when all this went down, what I discovered is that what I really wanted was what I want. What I really wanted was for Dan to be in the driver's seat and God to either be in the passenger seat or the back seat. And over time, the healing through all this was very difficult. It took months and months, and I mean, not even for full healing, but just to come back to a healthier place. And what God used was going through the Psalms. I started reading through the Psalms like I had never read them before, and I just started seeing David and the other psalmists cry out to God, and just the emotion and the raw, real way that they communicate with God and the way that their faith was. And you know, that was a big moment for me. And after that, I ended up moving down to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. We moved into a neighborhood with 2 Megan's Law sex offenders, a Wiccan witch, a heroin dealer, a prostitute who lived next door, a young lady who slept under the bridge with different boyfriends, would bring them to our small group, and God ended up allowing me to be a church planner and then to eventually marry my wife, Joy. And Joy was not the girl that I have been talking about. It was a different girl. And I ended up marrying Joy, and we've had our son, Landon, who survived 3 open-heart surgeries already. He has an incredible story. We've got our second kid on the way. His name is Declan. And guys, I got to tell you, when God takes what you really want, it sucks. That's hard. It's hard when God takes what you really want. But when he shows you what you should want, which is himself, it's unbelievably worth it. And maybe for some of you, you're coming into this BBC or CSU culture, and it's kind of weird. Like maybe you're here and you're not a follower of Jesus yet, or maybe you're new to the faith, or maybe you come from a background where the Christian subculture is not part of your reality. Or maybe you're like me, and you've been a part of the Christian subculture for a long time, and you know, maybe you can relate to some of the stuff I've been talking about. I don't know. I don't know where you're at today. But I can tell you this. From here on out, guys, when you have those moments, maybe they're big moments, maybe they're small moments, where God takes what you really want and he shows you what you should want, I just want to be a voice in your life, and I hope that you remember this. It's entirely worth it. If you open up your Bibles, I want to share with you a couple verses. Open up to Psalm 37. Psalm 37, verses 3 and 4. I'll just leave you with these couple scriptures as we head back into our day. Psalm 37:3 says, "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness." I remember reading this a few years ago, and I was like, man, I think that's God's definition of success. You see, a lot of us, we've bought culture's lies of what success really is. I think this is what true success is. Trust in the Lord. That's faith. You know what our culture says? Our culture says doubt. Doubt is where it's at. And our culture magnifies doubt. And the world says doubt is everything. It's awesome. You know what doubt leads to? Doubt leads to chaos. Now, it's a very real part of our Christian experience, but you know what? Faith is the starting point. God says, if you want to be successful in life, you got to have faith in my son Jesus, who lived a perfect life for you, who died for you, who came alive again for you. Guys, if you make something else ultimate in your life, one of the things you got to realize is, say it's sexual pleasure. If you make sexual pleasure like the forefront and the ultimate thing in your life, here's what you got to know about sex. Sex will never die for you. It won't. If you make your career the number one thing in your life, guess what? Your career will never die for you. If you make money the number one thing in your life, money will never die for you. There is only one person who has died for you. There is one person who has created you, who loves you, who knows you better than you know yourself. His name is Jesus. And God says, if you want to be truly successful in life, the starting point is faith. It's faith in the one who knows you, created you, who died for you. Trust in the Lord, and then it says, and do good. That's obedience. But guys, our culture, the world says, no, rebellion. That's where it's at. Stick it to the man. Do what you want. Follow your heart's desire, right? We'll talk about that in verse 4. But man, that's what our culture says. But God says, no. Have faith, and then because you have that faith, obey me. It's a natural result of faith is that we obey God. Obey me, dwell in the land. That's contentment. Everything else in this world is all about greed and jealousy and envy and keeping up with the other person and Instagram and all this stuff that flies at us, and we go, oh my gosh, I don't have that. I'm not content with what I have, and that leads to despair. And then finally, trust in the Lord. It's faith, obedience, do good, dwell in the land, it's contentment, and then befriend faithfulness. That's perseverance. God says if you want to be truly successful, keep persevering in the things that you know are true. And here's what I know is true. Look at verse 4. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Guys, when I was sitting in your seats, I would read that verse and I would go, awesome! God owes me. God owes me. If I'm staying on the straight and narrow, I'm doing what I should. I'm even gonna go be a pastor, for goodness sakes. I mean, come on. I'm doing all this for you, God, so you owe me. You need to give me what I want. Guys, that's not what this verse is saying. You know what this verse is saying? Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Do you know what happens when you start making God the focal point of your life, and not just the focal point, but the center of your affections, your emotions, your desires, everything about you? Because the Christian life isn't just about our heads. It's not just about knowing facts. It's about our hearts and our hands. It's about all three. And when we make Jesus the focal point of our desire, of our pursuits, of our affections, you know what happens? God changes our hearts. And He takes what we really want so He can show us what we should want. And guys, I've got to tell you, following Jesus has not always been easy. Making God's definition of success is really tough in a world that flies straight in the face of what we just read here. Having faith, obeying God, being content with what He gives, and persevering in what we know. That is hard. It is not easy, but I can tell you, it is entirely worth it. I can't imagine my life without the call to serve God's church. I can't believe that God uses a broken, messed up, jacked up dude like me to serve in the church. It's an incredible thing. It's only by His grace. I can't believe that God gave me this amazing woman, Joy, to be my best friend and teammate for life. And I can't believe that He's allowing me the privilege to be a dad of this incredible young son named Landon and a second on the way named Declan. I just can't believe it. And I'm here to tell you, guys, that when God takes what you really want so He can show you what you should want, it's way better than what we naturally want. God's best really is best. And I just wanted to share that with you today. Let's pray. God, You are good. You are love. And I'm not sure where we're all at this morning. Maybe there's some here who don't yet have a personal relationship with You. And if that's true, whether for anyone in here live or online listening in, I just pray that they would see how great you are, how amazing your Son's perfect life, death, and resurrection on our behalf is, and I just pray that they would give their lives to you. But God, for most of us in this room, we've probably already crossed that line of faith, and God, I just pray that we would stick with the stuff, that we would define success your way, and that we would lean in to what you are doing in our lives, what you are allowing, the story that you are telling, because your glory is even better than our story that we have for ourselves. God, thank you for your grace. Thank you for giving us yourself. Please help us to love you with all that we have, and in turn to love others as well. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.